Welcome to CivilNet. We're very pleased today to have as our guest a very well-known MP in Armenia, Anna Grigoryan, who is actually one of the few interesting faces we have, unfortunately, in our parliament. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Grigoryan.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to start off with it's almost a personal question, a personal political question. You were quite unique because you actually started your political career with a ruling party, and then you migrated to the opposition and the minority. Man, I've been involved in politics for 35 years, and that's a very rare occurrence because, as you know, being in a political minority is quite miserable because you really don't have that much power, and outside of the power of protest, you don't have much to do as far as making your case. What is it that drove you to have this transformation, to go from one side to the other? What specific issues, what specific values? What is it that made you take such a drastic step?
To understand the essence of my decisions, we need to understand where I started. It was back in 2018. There was a huge protest rejecting the third period of tenure of Artsakh, and I was supporting this agenda. I have never been member of Civil Contact Party. I want to fix this thing. But then after the war, I have never been, by the way, member of the parliament before the war. And after the war, when it was my turn to take the mandate, I had to decide whether to take the mandate and go to the parliament or to leave the faction or not. And I decided that because of what happened to our country, what happened to Artsakh, what happened to our people, I need to be very vocal in my decision, and I decided that I need to take the mandate to represent the people who were for the revolution in 2018, but never meant to see the situation we had in Nagorno-Karabakh. So I decided I need to stand with my values, with the principles, because Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh is part of my nature, is part of my identity. I have even roots concerning Nagorno-Karabakh. So this was the main motivation. I decided to leave the ruling party, not the ruling party, but the faction, and to act as an individual MP. And afterwards, you know that I became part of Armenia faction, and I continued what I'm doing now.
I'm going to ask you a very important issue that came up yesterday. As you know, all of us have been interested in what happened during the war, the 44-day war, and there's been a report that's been worked on for almost 5 years. I think it's MP Kocharyan is the chair of the committee. And yesterday it was announced that this report, which people have been anxiously waiting for, is not going to get released. It's going to be essentially held as a private matter in your world. From what I understood of their press release, MPs will be able to go read this privately, but it's not going to be open to the public, which is quite upsetting because there are thousands of people, parents, brothers, sisters of soldiers that we lost that want to have this questions answered. 150,000 people ethnically cleansed from Artsakh want their questions answered, and all the rest of Armenian citizens want their questions answered. What do you think about this non-release of this report? Why do you think that is? And if you agree for it to be released, if you think it should be released, how would you fight to get that done?
Initially, we were very skeptic concerning these discussions, this committee, because we believe that people that were personally engaged in the war, they know what they did, can never be very objective in discussing the issue. So we were skeptic and we didn't take part in these discussions of the committee. I'm a member of this Committee of Security and Defense, and it was my very firm belief that they cannot discuss issues that further, when the government changes, the new government will observe what happened during the 44-day war, but not specifically under Anna Grigoryan and the ruling party. But I believe that because nowadays a lot of their main agenda is about peace, they didn't want to reveal certain things that will take us back to the days of 44-day war. But apart from this, I want us to remember one of the sentences recently Pashinyan wrote. He said that he had a choice to make. So to go through the path of making certain concessions and go through the path of regulation of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, but he decided to go through the path of war. So concessions or war, he decided war. He chose war. So what else could be revealed? So it's a huge confession he made, and afterwards, again, after the change of the government, this will be a matter of serious discussion, from the legal point of view.
So you don't think releasing it is that relevant from your point of view? Is that fair to say? Or is that...
The release of what they created, Andrei Kochenen is not the person to make a very just, a very fair document. They are not the person who could release a document relevant for the whole population.
I want to bring up to something that's obviously a contemporary issue, which is the Washington Accords from August. There's a great deal of misunderstanding because people think a peace treaty has been signed. Peace treaty has not been signed.
Yes.
Peace treaty has been initialed. Peace treaty itself has many problems. While at the same time, what has been signed is the specifics of the Trump road. There's complete different interpretations. The government essentially claims this as peace for all times. The opposition claims that this is an abdication of essentially allowing a corridor, which, if you read the document as it is written, it is not a corridor. It's the Trump road, whatever it is we want to call it. What is your interpretation of what came out of that meeting? What do you think came out of it, if there's anything that was good that you agree with, and what is it that you disagree with?
So what Pashinyan gained was a photo that he had with Trump. I think it was their main aim and the agenda they could nowadays use, the peace agenda. But at the same time, we see that peace is not established. So they claim that peace has come once and forever. We understood that without security-specific guarantees on the ground, peace can never come. So, there is no security mechanisms there. There is no person that can intervene in case Azerbaijan tries to do launches a new attack against Armenia. So without security guarantees, without specific measures, we can never talk about peace. So this is the first thing I want to fix. The second thing, you rightfully said that there is no word corridor there, but at the same time, we see that the very specific road is separated from all other roads. If it has the same parameters than the others have, why was there a need to make a specific criteria for this road? So this is a thing that differentiates it. So we believe it is a corridor because we at the same time hear what Aliyev says, that they don't want to meet Armenians standing in this road. And until today, Pashinyan is not able to very clearly explain how it's going to work there. Whatever question we ask, he usually says that there could be 100 questions and we're not able to answer to all those questions. So there is no corridor and so on and so forth. So this is their main agenda, but we believe, yes, this is a specific road different from all the other roads, which can make us to the conclusion that this is a corridor. And the second thing, peace hasn't come, and Pashinyan used this meeting only for his coming elections only.
I'm going to ask you a difficult and an unfair question.
Please.
And the general view among most political analysts, and in fact ordinary people, is that the opposition in Armenia, as currently constructed, is ineffective. You might disagree with that, but I'm talking about as a whole. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm not talking about you. I'm just as a collective. And one of the things that always came up with me is, I'm sure you know about Anna Grigoryan, and we know what happened with her. And if I was giving advice to the opposition, she would be the most famous woman in Armenia. And then I noticed that no one brings those issues up. For example, legal cases, make them very personal. And then you see our opposition, frankly, chasing secondary issues that people really don't take seriously, like they're tearing apart this and half a dozen different things, which are, if you really look at it, it's greatly exaggerated.
I'm very
or
sorry.
distorted.
Which were the secondary issues?
Like the repairs, the repairs that are happening in Artsakh. If you go on social media, there's all kinds of things. Half of them are not true, and I'm not saying that you guys said it, but a lot of things that are just exaggerated. Why is it that our opposition, in this case you and friends, cannot personalize and focus on the real mistakes or the real things that you can essentially politically, for lack of a better phrase, use to attack the government or hang them politically, and then they end up chasing secondary issues that aren't that important?
Generally, I need to confess that we are ineffective because Pashinyan is still the prime minister. Generally, you are right. I need to confess this. At the same time, I don't think that we are focusing on secondary issues. Our main focus is on, of course, external politics, security issues, internal politics, including the existence of political prisoners, prisoners of war we have in Baku. I mean, these are the main agenda we have. But of course, I personally also chase the agenda of corruption. I do it I'm not telling it effectively, I can do more, obviously, but I'm also chasing this agenda. So are we that effective? I don't believe so. We need to work more on these issues. But the issue of prisoners in Armenia, political prisoners, I think is one of the top agendas now in Armenia.
You're referring to the people arrested during the church arrests and
I refer to archbishops.
Yeah.
Eric,
Okay.
I really,
So I'm going to clarify who we're talking about.
Yes, I really feel ashamed now when I'm sitting here having an interview, being interviewed when an archbishop, one of the most influential archbishops in Armenia, is imprisoned for only having his word, for only an interview that he gave several years ago. This is a shame for Armenia, generally. I'm ashamed to see that one of the most prominent people are Samvel Karapetyan is imprisoned, again, only for what he said during his interview. So these are things that is on our focus today, and also prisoners, the issue of prisoners of war. Again, Nikol Pashinyan went to the General Assembly, and he even didn't dare pronounce the word prisoner of war. He used, I don't know, very complex sentences without clarifying that we have prisoners of war. And he doesn't chase this agenda in the external politics. So I think we have this focus on very important issues. There are, of course, secondary issues, but I think that our main failure is in the arena, in the field of social issues. We need to work with specific groups of people.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by social issues? What specific issues are you discussing?
For example, the specific field of agriculture. There are so many problems there. I believe none of us raises these questions effectively. So we need to work with the people that have specific issues.
Water waste, water use.
Yes. General issues are very important, security issues, international relations, and so on and so forth. But every day people face specific problems concerning their everyday life. We need to secure their very fair life and to bring agendas that refer to their personal life and problems they face every day. So I think we haven't been very effective in this field specifically, and we will work on that, of course.
One of it's a much broader question. It's about what is described by people in politics as the Western pivot. The narrative is that essentially post the Yarmouk invasion, Armenia moved to the West, is working to integrate into Western systems, political, military, half a dozen different things. This is equally married to the idea of Russian decline in Armenia, the presence of Russian influence, and specifically what is perceived to be Russian betrayals, whether it's in 22 and both of us have been in Sunik, and you've talked to people, we know the story, is the Russians leaving their positions, we've all heard it, seen it, and what ordinary people say, and obviously the ethnic cleansing in Artsakh. First of all, do you think that Armenia's pivot to the West was a conscious political decision, or was it the fact that it was the only road after the Russian betrayal? And I want to close that with a criticism that people have of people in the opposition is that you're very quick to criticize the government, which is fair, but you're always reluctant to criticize Russia or Russian state interests. So I want to give you a chance to respond.
I don't know where this criticism comes from, because I myself have many statements concerning Russia's inactions when Azeri soldiers attacked Sunik region. I was there, I was talking to people, as you said, and they had the same points, and I have risen this question for so many times. So telling us that we have never criticized Russia, no, we did, especially when there was attack against Armenia. When you said the pivot to the West, how can we describe that? Is it somehow portrayed in in trade with the European Union? I don't believe so. The dependency on Russia is even more today than it has ever been before. And the second thing, when we're talking about pivot to the West, it has to be harbored on certain values, on democracy and rule of law, protection of human rights. Do we see it in Armenia? So the more we go to the West, the more non-democratic we become in Armenia. So I see it this way. So if we choose European integration, because we have these democratic values, we believe that we're going to be more democratic in our country. We see that we are going in the wrong direction, because again, the more closer we become with the European Union, the more authoritarian regime becomes in Armenia. And in terms of economy, again, I don't see that. There are certain rules for Armenian business that will help them develop with the European Union. Again, the dependency on Russia today is much more than it has ever been before. Only to make this law in the parliament that we launch the process of European integration is not enough. For example, I have many times asked this question, what's the roadmap? How do you imagine there? How do you imagine getting into the European Union? And there is also another thing from the European perspective. Are they ready to accept Armenia as part of the European Union? Are they talking about European enlargement process? I believe this is not their primary agenda right now. If it was the primary agenda of the European Union, then Moldova, then Ukraine, then Georgia would already be part of the European Union. So we see that right in our neighborhood, countries have started these processes for many, many years ago, and they are still not part of the European Union. Okay, we need to have very stable, good relationship with the European Union generally, and different members of the European Union separately. But at the same time, we should not live in illusion that we're going to be part of the European Union in the near future. At the same time, by the way, the government claims that we are not going to withdraw from the Eurasian Economic Union, because they understand.
This is the Russian version of the EU, for people who don't know.
So EU, it's impossible to be at the same time in the European Union and Eurasian Economic Union. So they understand very well, I mean, the numbers do not lie, that you need to be in the Eurasian Economic Union to safeguard your economic growth. Otherwise, you're just going to be destroyed. So when you say in the very first sentence, it was kind of a statement that there is a pivot to the West, I don't see it apart from the statements. I don't see it. And is it realistic? I don't believe so.
Well, I think just to clarify, obviously, I think you're correct on you make good points on the economic one. This is more military, political, and other things that we know. Some of the things can be discussed, some can't be discussed, but we know some of the other things, which I'm sure you're aware of, but that's what I was referring to.
And by the way, the security component. If we think that we're going to the West because the security will be guaranteed, how we think so? The European Union does not provide security guarantees. They have never spoken about that. Even the United States, Washington, in this trip, I mean, in the Washington agreements, there is no single sentence concerning security guarantees.
Well, I think it's not. You're correct about that, but I think when we talk about security, it's things like training, weapon sales, which we know that we've been buying weapons from the West. We're all aware of that. So I think that's the nuance that I was referring to. It's easy to be part of the opposition in a way. Because,
it's easy?
In a way, because you're not responsible for anything. And it's not fun, but it's easier because you don't have the burden of implementing programs, running agencies. And running any government is difficult no matter who's doing it. It's not an easy process. I'll give you a magic wand. You or someone, your party takes over, maybe you're the prime minister. Tell me the 4 or 5 things that you would focus on the first month or two. What is your agenda? What is it that you want to do immediately after taking power?
First of all, I need to respond to the first part of your question, that it's easy to be in opposition. I believe it's not easy to be in opposition today, because for me personally, it would be much easier to be in the ruling party, to be in power, having a huge responsibility, than being in opposition, not being able to solve the issues. At the same time, we're living in an environment where opposition is too much criticized. There are a lot of attacks by the ruling party. You know, a lot of people are being arrested, imprisoned, and sometimes even killed, as recently in Merzaban. So it is very difficult to be. I want just to make the statement.
Fair point. Fair point.
If you're not against it.
No. Fair
Okay.
point.
So if we were the government, first of all, there are the issue of regulation. Relationship with Azerbaijan and Turkey is, of course, on our prime agenda. Even the next day we are in power, we are ready to sign a document that fixes that we have relationship, having diplomatic relationship with Azerbaijan and Turkey. We are ready to do that. So usually there's a criticism against us that we do not want to have relationship or diplomatic ties with Turkey and Azerbaijan. This is not true. So we are ready to sign a document establishing diplomatic relationship with Turkey and Azerbaijan. At the same time, we have serious issues to be solved concerning prisoners of war, withdrawal of Azerbaijani forces from Armenia, and of course safeguarding certain rights of people of Nagorno-Karabakh. We cannot pretend that there is no such issue. People of Nagorno-Karabakh have rights and they have to be safeguarded, and the government of Armenia is the only guarantor that can safeguard these rights. The rights of collective return, the rights of their property, the protection of cultural and historical heritage in Nagorno-Karabakh that is being eliminated today. So this is one point, or one to the second point. The third point, of course, certain social issues. You know that 25% of our population lives under poverty. This is a huge problem to be solved. The external debt has risen to 13, even $14 billion. But at the same time, we look around to see what strategic infrastructures have been built, how people started living better, and we see that no significant steps have been taken. And of course, we need to solve this issue of social problems. I mean, people need to live better. And of course, when we are talking about general issues, the security. The security is one of the main priorities we're going to have, because you know that even the military budget, the spending for the military budget has been risen by this government. This is a fundamental, this is a wrong decision. We need to at least preserve the money we use for this military, for military. And I think the security issue, establishing relationship with Azerbaijan and Turkey, having better relationship with Iran and Georgia, because you know that this government has announced that we have already established a strategic partnership with these both countries, but we see fundamental issues there, including recently in Georgia we had problems with transit, and so there are a lot of problems we are going to solve.
There's some parts of what you said, obviously there's people in this government that would disagree with. We've built a lot of roads, it's brand new schools in rural areas. So there's things that they can push back on, but that's not relevant. That's their job. It's not my job, but I know what they would say in response to you. I'm going to close with an issue, because you already raised it, about Artsakh refugees. It's obviously, not only is it painful, it's also very difficult in so many ways. How would you, and one of the things that I was surprised with after the ethnic cleansing is that we never as a country called for a donor conference, which is normally what happens in a situation like this, which should have allowed a lot more money to help people that are in dire need. What you're really looking at is this magic medium, I call it, in which you are integrating people who need to be integrated into Armenia today, while at the same time keeping their collective legal rights as a group. So it's like you're not, just because you live in a proper house in Armenia, it does not mean you don't have a right to go back home. That's much easier said than done. How would you do that? How would you, I mean, what international instruments can you use? Is it the ICC? Is it diplomacy, public pressure? I mean, how do you balance these two out, while at the same time making sure that people that are here are living the way that normal human beings should live?
First of all, yes, people of Nagorno-Karabakh living in Armenia face serious challenges, including, you know that until recently they were getting some support from the government, but they ceased this program, and people have serious problems even to have a flat and have an apartment to live in. And usually I'm traveling by taxi, and usually the taxi drivers are from, I'm from Artsakh, and I very frequently talk to them, and they say that the main issue they need to solve is the issue of the housing issue. But the money the government suggests has nothing to do with the current reality. So you cannot buy a house with the money the government suggests. So first of all, to solve this problem, you need to raise the amount of money, first of all. And you can raise amount of money not only from the budget, but again, having this international support. It is possible to do. But because we do not see that it is the motivation of the government to preserve these people in Armenia, we see that those actions are never done. And I know that more than 15,000 people from Nagorno-Karabakh have already left Armenia, finding refuge somewhere else, mainly in Russia. So if you are motivated to have these people, more than 100,000 people in Armenia, the first thing you need to do is to solve the problem of their houses. But you can never solve this problem giving them very small amount of money, very well knowing that they're not going to solve this problem with this amount of money.
Do you believe that's intentional?
I believe it's intentional. I believe it's intentional because the majority of Artsakhs do not accept them. They blame them for what happened to them, right? So this is the first thing and the second thing, of course, this is the issue that is true for all the parts of Armenia, the issue of workplace. They do not feel much integrated. Again, people working as taxi drivers. There are a lot of people where I live that have opened these places for Zhingalov huts. I'm sure you could have. Yes, I'm sure you come across a lot of such people. So, but I believe that there is no very well-planned action plans for people coming from Nagorno-Karabakh. And again, we need to use our colleagues, international community, because this is an issue that European Union, again, that the United States would be very could be engaged.
Well, it's part of their failures.
Yes. It was, of course, part of their failure. I can talk a lot about this, but as it happened now, they can be engaged in solving these issues. But again, as I say, this government does not have the motivation to do everything that people stay here. But again, coming to their rights of collective return, this has to be on the agenda. I know very well that right now it is impossible to make it true. It will not come true right now, but we need to have this agenda on the table. We need to have the agenda of their property rights. And for example, there is no reason for not raising the question of protection of our cultural heritage in Artsakh. Why wouldn't they raise this question? There are specific international organizations that deal with this issue, and they are not raising this question. And the main thing is that Nikol Pashinyan tries to kill everything that has to do with Artsakh, the history, cultural heritage. He's not killing, but he does nothing to prevail it. He's trying to kill everything that has the memory of Artsakh, and these issues. I think this is the main motivation he doesn't raise this question.
Well, Ms. Grigoryan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us at CivilNet today.